Well, I want to say welcome back, everybody. I think everybody's back in the main room and ready for our Q&A and wrap up. I want to say thank you to our college mentors and our ET staff who was in the breakout rooms assisting with this challenge today of cybersecurity. I hope that they were able to crack some codes and encrypt some messages to everybody. But it's time for our wrap up where we're going to introduce our two amazing college mentors. James is going to lead this, but just want to say after their introductions, it's time for you all, your students, to share with us. So I hope that you get those cameras ready and those groups ready to present. I know this is a digital lab, so maybe you want to share some screenshots or something. Just prepare while we introduce Ethan and Annie. And James, you want to take it away?
Yes. All right, everybody. So I'm going to now turn it over first to Annie to introduce herself and just let me know when it's time for me to change a slide.
Yeah, hi everybody. I'm so excited to be here with you today. My name is Annie. I'm currently a senior at the University of Notre Dame. I actually study computer science and economics. Picked up a minor recently in Chinese as well. But since I study computer science, this lab has a lot to do with what I study. I haven't taken any specific cybersecurity courses, but I've learned about encryption, learned about RSA in my previous classes. And so if you guys have any questions about it, I can try to answer those. Besides that, if you just have questions about computer science as a major in general, if you have questions about trying to figure out what to study, how to do a double major, how to pick up minors, how to decide, what you want to do one day, definitely, think about those questions for the future Q&A session. Right now, I'm going to give you a little bit, kind of like a timeline from when I started Notre Dame to where I am right now. So, I graduated high school in 2021. My high school career was very, very much an exploratory time. I didn't really have like a strong focus of where I wanted to be. I honestly thought I was going to do med school just because I didn't know what I wanted to do. But I ended up coming to Notre Dame and starting with computer science. And when I started, I realized that I could pick up a second major, and I had a pretty big interest in economics. So I thought that the two of them would combine really well. uh, After my freshman year during the summer, I actually worked in New York City at like a finance company. So that was me kind of exploring my econ side of my studies. But when I did that, I realized that I didn't really like the finance world that much. I didn't really enjoy the culture of it or the work I was doing. So I kind of, learned from that experience to pivot more towards my computer science degree. Then next summer, I actually worked with Engineering Tomorrow, the company that you guys are working with right now, to develop some labs. So not this one specifically, but perhaps another one that you guys will potentially work with. Um, Following that, let's see, I on the next slide, I went to study abroad in London during my junior fall. So if you guys have questions about studying abroad, about my experience in London, or how to do that, how to look for that, definitely ask me there. But while I was studying abroad, I got to intern at Mars Wrigley. So if you guys know like Snickers and Twix, like those candies, that's all Mars Wrigley, and I got to work there as a marketing intern. Marketing is something I never did in my life, but it was just kind of like a let's try it out situation. And I really enjoyed it. I learned a lot about the culture of the workplace I want to be in, and the type of work I want to work with. Following that, uh, this past summer, I was at PwC, which is a very large consulting firm. So, and consulting isn't exactly something that people know about back in high school, but essentially, it's just this industry that helps other companies solve their problems. So, and specifically, I was in their cloud and digital department, which is like tech consulting. I helped them implement some Oracle platforms for like basically tracking a lot of this company's assets. This was extremely interesting. However, I decided that consulting wasn't necessarily the thing for me. It's very interesting as a career, but didn't exactly fit the lifestyle that I wanted, and didn't give me exactly like the long-term growth that I hoped for. So therefore, I'm excited to announce that I actually recently just signed an offer with none other than McDonald's, which in their global technology rotational program. I'll be in Chicago, and with this program, it's a 2-year program where I get to explore 3 different rotations. So one of them might be cybersecurity, actually. And from that, I'll get to decide where I kind of want to pivot my career. On the very right, the top picture is me and my fellow intern friends at PwC this past summer. And then over Thanksgiving, I actually went to Chicago and went to see like the headquarters I've been working at, and it's really fun. They have a Hamburger University sign, which just makes the entire workplace just a lot more, I guess, like a fun vibe that I want to be in. But yeah, now I'll turn it over to Ethan to introduce himself.
Yeah, good morning, everybody. I'm Ethan. I am a senior at Johns Hopkins University studying material science and engineering. And I'll give a little spiel on material science in a bit, just because it's a lesser known major, and I have to do it, even though you guys are all here for cybersecurity. But I'll touch on that a little bit as well. So my interests are in materials development and additive manufacturing, especially how can we use additive manufacturing to make new materials or refine their properties. And then also a little bit in alternative fuels, so looking at things like lithium-ion batteries, solid-state batteries, if you've heard of any of those. So next slide, please. Touch on a little bit of my research, some of the opportunities I've done. So here at Hopkins, well known for research. That's why I chose to come here. And so I actually came in pre-med, similar to Annie. I thought I was going to go down the medical route. And so I did some research on creating organ-on-a-chip devices. And I can go more in depth for those of you who might have questions. But that was pretty cool. And I did some 3D printing of these devices to make them faster to prototype. And that was pretty cool. So we were growing brain vasculature in these engineered devices. And then after that, I worked at Northrop Grumman a little bit, completely shifted gears to aerospace and defense, looked at integrating different weapon systems and radar systems onto airplanes, got to spend a lot of the summer in the air, which was a lot of fun. And now a lot of my research is focused on structural materials. So again, using 3D printing, but this time to print metals instead of plastics, and looking how can we use 3D printing as a tool to create new and stronger metals to even replace things that might be rare to find, like lithium. How can we make other metals to perform the same properties, if not even better, or make like batteries just through metal. So lots of cool avenues there. And a lot of my research uses computational approaches. Encryption is not something that I necessarily dabble in frequently, but in academia, we do want to keep what we're doing safe. So we use tools like GitHub as a open forum, but still closed within our research group to contain all our code. And of course, if you guys are interested in that stuff, can talk a little bit more about that. And then I'm also looking at concrete and how do we make a renewable alternative that is actually carbon negative in the course of its life cycle. So integrating plants to create biocomposite materials. And that's also very cool stuff. And I just applied to grad school as my next direction. So for those of you interested in pursuing a PhD or master's, I'm happy to talk about how I made that decision. Alrighty, and these are just some more shots. If we get into it, we can of course come back to some of my research stuff, but don't want to hold you guys up, and let's see what you guys have been up to. Love to see your projects. Please come up and show us if you've made any progress. We'd love to see, or ask us any questions either about the lab or about college for Annie and I.
Well, yeah. Oh, sorry, James, go.
Oh, yes. Yes, first, we do want to shout out our two ET engineers who are on the ground today. Joanna, who is at Bladensburg High School in Maryland, and Jerry Dawes, who's at St. Peter's Boys High School in my hometown of Staten Island, New York. If either one of you are ready to go, if you want to come up to the camera and introduce yourself, then introduce your teacher, and then any students in your classroom who'd like to do our first round of demos, please feel free.
I got a text. I think Jerry is ready. If he can unmute where he is.
Awesome.
And I will spotlight him so that everybody can see his group nice and big. Can you guys unmute?
You're still muted? Oh.
You're still muted.
Can you guys hear us?
Oh. We can't hear you, St. Peter's.
No, we cannot hear you. All right, while they figure that out, I'm going to remove their spotlight and just open the floor to anybody else who is ready to chat with us today. Are there any groups that want to share? I see a lot of cameras on, and I know there was a lot going on in the breakout room. So please do not be shy. This is your time and your opportunity to share with us. And Jerry, once you're ready, we will head right back to you when we can hear you.
And you can be showing us screenshots. You can be just talking about your experience. You know, we want to know what was hard for you, what was interesting for you, how it kind of made you think about your daily password making process. But if you guys have screenshots too, like definitely we want those as well. And if you guys are able to do it, just start talking. And once we hear you, we'll let you know.
Yes.
Are there any other schools who are ready to share?
I don't see any hands raised at this moment, but I just want to also open up the floor to teachers. If your group is not ready to share, you please come to the camera. You can unmute and ask a question. You can type in chat, or you can unmute and ask these amazing presenters. Oh, there we go. Got our first question.
Perfect.
So who wants to take this one?
I'll just read it out loud for anyone's benefit. How do you balance work? Oops, it went away. How do you balance work and play while studying engineering in college? Good question.
Yeah, I can go first on this. I personally, the way I think about it is like there's a time to work and there's a time to play. And I try to separate my life into these types of categories, right? So when I'm working, I want to be locked in. I want to be, in a quiet place. I want to be easy to see.
Well, we can hear you, St.
That's
Peter's.
them, right?
Yes.
Can you hear me?
No. Oh, yeah. Yes.
Yes.
We'll come back to this question.
A little noisy, but we can hear you.
James, can you hear me okay?
Yes. Jerry, you have the floor.
Good morning, everyone. Jerry Dawes, staff engineer tomorrow, and I'm on location in St. Peter's, Staten Island, New York. Yeah! What I'd like to do is introduce our teacher, Mr. Barbarino. Come on up. As you can hear, a lot of energy here. So I have Max and Mike. We're going to talk about their experience with CyberCheck. Max and Mike, take it away.
So first, the Caesar cipher just because of.
You want to stand a little closer to the mic so we can hear you a little bit better? Yeah.
I'd say that the best decipher we used today was the Caesar cipher because of its easy ability to use and just clear instructions compared to the other ones. I felt like that one was just more compatible for most people in the group.
Yeah.
Sure. So you found it easy to use, but
Yeah.
you think a hacker would also find it easy to hack?
Yeah, and I can see why.
Caesar several times. I think it's more effective than just once. So it's not necessarily easy, but if you only encrypt once, certainly it's going to be not effective.
Very good observation.
All right, James, do you have any questions for Max or Mike?
So yeah, I mean, you kind of answered the question about what you thought was like the easier one. Did you find one to be more challenging, even if you didn't like working with it as much? Which was like the hardest, and maybe why?
Well, there was another one. I can't remember what it was called. It began with a V.
The Visionary, yes.
Visionary one, yeah.
Yeah.
When I first clicked the link and read through the description of it, it didn't really make sense until I went into the actual like website and tried using it and playing it with by myself. Yeah. And then I kind of got a grasp for it.
Right. Did you notice anything about like ways that like you could see why maybe it's seen as more secure? Did you like any observations you had there?
I felt like the letter sequences were very strange, which also could lead to help like keep your passwords and usernames safe because it's less likely to guess a random string of like those letters.
That's exactly right. Good job.
All right, so James, as we are wrapping up, I'm going to have Max and Mike talk about what they're thinking about in terms of careers.
Yes.
What are you guys thinking about?
I'd say I'm mostly thinking about something in the medical field. So,
my father currently works in IT. He's an IT director in L'Oreal. So I have ambitions in the tech industry. I mean, since I was 9, I wanted to do game development and cybersecurity. Recently has been like a major interest of mine because of its career abilities.
Those are great. Good luck to you both.
Thank you.
All right, so let's give Max and Mike a round of applause, please. All right, so St. Peter signing out.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, St. Peter's.
Fantastic job. Fantastic job. Okay, now that you guys have seen how it's done, nobody should be afraid to share with us and unmute and pop on the camera and share with us about their experience today. What site did they like the best? And if not, while we're waiting for a group, Annie, you were interrupted about your work play balance.
Yes.
Yeah. Totally fine. I'd love to be interrupted by people trying to share. But going back to that, when we think about like trying to balance the two, I think a lot of people often think very like it all has to happen at once, right? So while you're working, you're thinking about the things that you're missing out on, the parties, the events, whatever it is. And while you're, playing, you're thinking about all the work that you have to do as well, right? And so I think this type of like, you're always thinking about the other thing is what drives a lot of people to kind of get overwhelmed and really stressed. I do see we have a school ready to.
For next image, yeah.
Yes.
Yes, we have a
Hello.
question. We have a question right here.
Oh, okay, perfect.
We have a question right here from Montebello High School. Can you see us?
Yes,
we
we can hear
see
you.
you.
All right,
We can
come
hear
on,
you.
yeah. We have Montebello High School. She is a chemistry student. So we have a question for you. So, okay, here you go. Go ahead. Introduce yourself.
Hi, my name is Kaylee. What field can I go to in like computer science and like chemistry together?
Good question.
That's a good question. I mean, if you can do computer science and chemistry as double majoring if you maybe go in with enough credits. But if you're thinking about like chemistry in a more, I guess, applicable sense rather than like a research form, there's a lot of schools that offer chemical engineering. That's something that's just interesting to you. A lot of people like to go into like food development. They like to think about like nuclear energy. It's one of those things where you learn all the chemistry that's really interesting, but then you think about it from a real world perspective of how you can be changing whatever field that you're interested in. I would also say that doing both chemistry, like if you do chemistry as a major and then computer science as a major, that's honestly a lot to balance. And I'm not even sure you could really finish that in 4 years unless you go crazy. But a lot of schools do offer some sort of like computer science minor, not maybe a chemistry minor. I'm not totally sure about that, but like they have like some sort of digital, related minor. So if you're more interested in like chemistry side of it, you could do that as the major and then think about just learning some applicable computer science skills to kind of like help your research or help whatever you're working on. If you want to think about, I think it right now for you, it'd be helpful to think about like what's the jobs that you find interesting and then work backwards from there. If you want to cure cancer, right? I wouldn't say chemical engineering is the route for you. But if you want to work at Coca-Cola one day, make the next Pepsi, that's chemical engineering, right? So that's kind of how I would think about it. But James, Ethan, do you guys have anything else to say?
Yeah, for sure. I'll also take this opportunity to jump on material science. Is a great opportunity to pursue chemical interests if you're looking for an engineering route. Definitely material science and engineering, chemical engineering, chemical and biomolecular engineering, biomedical engineering. All of those would allow you to pursue chemistry if you want. But then in terms of incorporating computer science into your studies, either if you wanted to pursue computer science as your major, you could, and then just take chemistry classes on the side, or if you're looking to be a medical field, you can take like pre-med classes. Those would be your chemistry classes. But alternatively, you could also a lot of engineering majors now and engineering in general as a field has become much more computationally informed. And so there's lots of classes that you could take for all those majors where you can incorporate computer science or just add it on as part of your research. If you go to a research institution, it'd be a great way to pursue that interest as well and combining chemistry and computer science. Very cool. Wish you the best. Sounds awesome.
Yep, I would echo those. I would point out that a lot of modern chemistry, especially research, actually involves a lot of use of like supercomputers and stuff because it's actually more efficient than running experiments in the lab. Instead of making a mess and getting expensive chemicals, they can use algorithms and stuff. So there's actually a lot of overlap between chemistry and computer science today.
And I don't know if you saw in the chat, but Thomas County Central High School, Mr. Bellamy's class has a student ready to share. Can you guys unmute?
Thank you very much.
So like two things I've kind of noticed, both one today. Oh. So two things I've noticed, like one today and just one in general. So like today with like when we broke off to like the question where it's like encrypt your own message with your own choice of cipher. One I found like generally interesting was the Pigpen one, where it's like you're not really encrypting it into like any words, but like more so just like I wouldn't really say scriptures, but like more so images. Which I found relatively seems like the more secure choice, since like it would be a lot harder to decrypt since you can't exactly tell like what you're trying to say originally, since there's not really a like clear pattern most of the time with it. And then with the other thing, during the very first part of it, where it's like come up with 3 examples of like stuff and for the weak and strong passwords in life, and like, it seems like people relatively will use things that mean more to them, which while can be, cracked relatively easily, um, they'll typically tend to like go an extra like note or two and include numbers and things like if it means something to them. So typically people who have things that mean more to them will use them in passwords and make it a lot stronger since not making it a lot easier for them to keep their things safe since not everybody would be able to guess what that would mean that much to them.
Yeah, so those
Very
are
good
two
point.
great observations, right? That I'll hit on the second one first, right? That people, the trick about a password, right? You need to remember the password to be able to use it, right? And so, kind of by default, we tend to use passwords that are easy for us to remember. But this is like why, if you ever, for example, have like you sign up for something and they ask you like those security questions to like name your second favorite dog from when you were 5 years old. A lot those are to help you reset your password, but you have to be careful with those because one of the things that hackers do if they're like really trying to break into your account is they kind of try to learn about you to figure out what might your password be, right? Like a lot of people use like the name of their pet as a password. Maybe they put a $sign in there, like you're saying, or an exclamation point. That does help. But if it's still a word, right, and a hacker kind of knows things like what the name of your pet is, because maybe they got it from your social media, they can use like when they're trying to crack the password, there are like computers that can kind of guess passwords and they'll just go to that. A lot of the algorithms that they use too use real words. So one way, which I think you may have been getting at, that is helpful is if you misspell it deliberately, like how it's misspelled, that can help. And obviously replacing letters with symbols. So like A replaced by an at, of course, or putting a random exclamation point. Something I kind of like to do is to put in characters that are not as common. So, you have all these other weird characters on your keyboard you don't usually use in like English, right? Like the grave or the tilde, like which is like the squiggle. Those can help. Obviously, the best thing though is if there's no actual words in what you're doing. And then kind of to your first point about like if you have the message, and even I think this is like what you're trying to say, like if the message itself isn't like a regular sentence, right? So you almost kind of have like a cipher that's then encrypted. My understanding is that's actually how some things are done, right? Like, it like in the military, for example, where like security is really important, they're definitely not writing down literally what they want, right? They have internal code words already where they know that they might say the word chicken and that actually means, do X, Y, or Z. And then you encrypt the word chicken. So if someone decrypts it, they have no idea what it means. So that's kind of a good point about additional layers of security that are different from one another. And that's why like multi-factor authentication is useful, right? Because someone steals your password, but maybe they don't have the ability to pick up your phone and then answer, like the phone to confirm that it was you. So additional layers of security all go a long way. We don't put all our faith in just encryption, but I think you brought up some really excellent points there.
Fantastic job. Thank you. And then I have a question from Holy Child. Holy Child, can you unmute?
Hi. So we were just wondering, what advice would you guys give seniors that are trying to manage their transition from high school to college? And then, when in college, how did you explore some of your interests outside of just the classes you took?
Great question.
Yeah, great question. I can go ahead and start. So definitely transitioning from high school to college, I would say is a bit more of a life transition because yeah, you still are taking classes, you still have extracurriculars, should you pursue those, but your time is much more up to you, as are your classes to an extent. I mean, your first 2 years, especially if you go into engineering, you have to take standard math and science and whatever classes that are associated with your major to be able to get to then your actual major specific classes. But it's more of building that lifestyle, right? So how do you make sure you get time to have meals during the day? That's not naturally broken into your schedule, right? You don't have lunch, you don't have recess, you don't have those kinds of natural breaks. And then also like even after school, that can be different every day depending on your classes. Some days you might finish at noon. Some days you might not have class. Other days you might not finish till 8 p.m. And then on top of that, you have a lot more work that does not have an immediate deadline. It's not like you necessarily have homework assignments that are due the next day. They may not be due for a week. They might not be due for several months. You might have long projects. So it's a lot more of managing your schedule and then trying to figure out when you fit in. I need to do laundry. I need to go to the grocery store. Those other extra tasks, especially as you progress in college and each year, your first few years, you might live in a campus dorm and then have access to food halls. But then as you depending on what you decide to do, you then might have to figure out how to get your own groceries. You might have an off-campus apartment. You might need a car. So it's more just it's starting to balance real world things, I would say, in your life. And then to address the second part of your question, kind of tie this all together, finding what you're interested in is really key because as you go in life, right, you'll have definitely interests that guide what you want to do. But then outside of that, you still have to find ways to have fun and enjoy yourself. And so that's, of course, trying to make friends, connect with people, put yourself out there. Like in college, it's not necessarily as easy just to make friends with those around you. You might have to look for it a little bit. And a great way to do that is clubs and extracurricular activities. So if you play a sport in high school, it's a great way to continue. Maybe just if you don't plan on doing a division level sport, you could, of course, do club or intramural sports. But then also there's tons and tons and tons of clubs and student groups, both on campuses themselves, but then maybe in the local community as well. Explore the city you're in or the town and just kind of, put yourself out there, go have some fun and don't think you're always sectioned into doing work. That's kind of the beauty also of having longer term assignments is you can choose when you do them. Yeah, they have to get done at some point, but you have a little bit more flexibility in your schedule. And so make sure you take advantage of that a little bit. That'd be my advice. Annie, what about you?
Yeah, I'd also add, and you mentioned you're a senior, and I think you guys are probably still working on like college applications, maybe due January 1st type of vibe. But once you guys finish that, like truly like enjoy the moments, the time that you have together before you graduate, first of all. Like I know my senior year was just like COVID, so I never got to just like have the time together with my friends at the end. But then that summer between high school and college is like amazing. Like you have absolutely like, zero responsibilities. Once you enter college, you now you start thinking about like what's next summer, what am I gonna do, what am I gonna think about for college for my future. But before you go to college, everything is kind of set and like you're in this very like stable place in your life. And so truly just like have fun, like don't stress about anything class related, at least, when you go to college. But just picking up on exactly what Ethan said about joining clubs and stuff, whether it's something academically you're interested in, or like I would argue, honestly, more importantly, like socially, you're interested in to make friends through clubs, through music, through or anything that you're interested in. You'll be surprised that like I think when in high school, typically you're around the same type of people, whether that's the same background or the same somewhat like interests in career. But when you meet people in college, everybody is like into their own niche little thing. And I think when you listen to other people talk about their passions and their interests, you also kind of get inspired and like, whoa, I didn't think about that. I should consider this. I should consider this. It's a completely like new world of like everything you thought you didn't fully know. And I think it's honestly for me, it's been like through my conversations with people that I've been like, oh, like I always thought that was like really like nerdy or something, so that's not gonna be cool. But then actually like I get into it and like I see someone else's perspective of it and it totally changes my mind. So when you're kind of deciphering what you're interested in, how you want to live your life, really like meet as many people as you can, and make those opportunities to meet them through joining clubs and extracurriculars. But great question. Next, if you guys have any other follow-ups, please let us know. So we're gonna move on to, I think, is it Millbrook High School?
Millbrook,
Or
yep.
is it? Yeah.
It's Millbrook High School, yes.
So we were wondering, how does law enforcement use cybersecurity?
Ooh. Good question.
Good job.
Yeah, so that's a great question. There's kind of a few different ways, right? Because we looked at the different sides of cybersecurity, right? We played the role of the encryptor and the decryptor. And within like law enforcement, they're going to be doing a bit of both, right? they obviously have some very important records that they would like to keep protected themselves, like case files and stuff like that. And they also, depending on like what agency you're looking at, they're responsible maybe for the government's larger security. I think generally most government agencies would have like their own cybersecurity divisions. They wouldn't like go to like the local police to do their security itself. But like, within the government, there's a lot of stuff the government needs to keep private, whether that's the military, national security stuff, but the government knows your social security number, right? They know a lot of information about you, and they do have an obligation to keep your information safe as well. So there are definitely jobs that like literally every government agency from the local level to the federal level about keeping stuff secure. And then for law enforcement from the local level, their internal cybersecurity, keeping their stuff safe, responding to problems in the government, like investigating, like what hackers did and like kind of trying to use the tools to figure out who did something, to prosecute them, but also just to like tell the agencies, hey, this is what you need to upgrade so this doesn't happen again. But they also do like counterintelligence, right? And so in that way, they're kind of acting like the hackers too, because if they're trying to catch whether they're like hackers or other criminals who may be, like being like could be tracked through the internet, right? Or foreign adversaries who are trying to do things as well, they have to kind of hack them to figure out what they're doing to spy on them. And so in that role, the law enforcement people actually play the role of the hacker, going the other direction. So they also have to have the tools to decrypt stuff and kind of put their own malware onto other people's computers. I think some malware actually was originally created by the government to use to spy on, people, and we won't get into all of that. But then some of that wound up in the private, public, I should say the public sector, which is how hackers have been able to use it. Maybe somebody was corrupt and they sold it, or someone just stole that malware, and now that's out there and all kinds of people use it to do things that are illegal as well. So there's a lot of cybersecurity like job opportunities in law enforcement, and they kind of come at it from both directions, which is very interesting.
Great question. I know some of you had some previously submitted questions.
Yes.
First one being from Columbia Heights Education Campus. How often do the themes around vulnerabilities repeat? So a vulnerability is patched, fixed, and another software later has the same type of vulnerability. I'm not totally sure how often it would happen. I'm sure there's statistics somewhere, but I think when people try to fix these types of vulnerabilities that you speak of, it's easier to fix it in the one scenario, but it's hard to test for future scenarios, right? Like if we don't even know what software we're launching next, we're still creating it. I think software developers will probably keep those in mind, and it'll be like definitely in consideration. But the reality is, and this is what happens when you get like a new Apple update, right? A lot of times there'll be another one just to fix the bugs from the previous one. It's hard to account for all of them at once. So I'm not totally sure about a statistic. I don't know if James, you would know any better.
Yeah, I don't have any numbers, but generally, more often than not, things are fixed. And then usually what happens is another exploit is caused by something else, right? One of the things is as you keep updating software, it gets more complex. More complexity means there's more places that things can go wrong too. So the general takeaway here is it's important to do software updates on your stuff reasonably often. However, there's also something to be said for not updating the minute something is released. I'll admit that I'm like that. I don't download the new iOS update immediately because there have been several cases in the past where there was a major issue the first week. Apple fixed it, but somebody, downloaded it right away and they had an unpleasant day. So there's, I think, a bit of a balance to be struck between maybe not downloading it immediately, but downloading it within a reasonable amount of time. And then if you get like a news story that there's like a big announcement, you should download the newest one immediately because it's a patch for a previous problem. You definitely should download that right away. But that's kind of the whole thing about, remember we went back to the CrowdStrike thing where they like accidentally created the issue with their update. That's also why companies hold on to revisions that they can go back to if there's an issue, so that like they can revert back to maybe when a vulnerability didn't exist.
We have a question in the chat How quickly do you have to decide what kind of engineering area you want to be in once you study it in college? Really great question. So for one thing, it's going to kind of depend on what school you're at. So let's say you didn't do engineering beforehand, right? Like let's say I'm in the College of Humanities or whatever it might be called, and I want to switch into engineering. Switching into engineering is going to be harder depending on what school you go to, just because it's an entirely different college. So when we talk about college, I think a lot of us just think about like the school itself, right? Like Notre Dame as a college. But within Notre Dame, there's smaller colleges. And depending on the type of school you go to, switching from college to college can be a pretty tough process. So that in itself, I would say, do some research, think about like maybe a general field you want to go into when you're thinking about college, applying in general. If you know you might want to switch between colleges, maybe look into how difficult that would be, if it's even possible. But if you already are in engineering, right? So you're in the College of Engineering or whatever school you're at. This, I think, you probably have at least, I would say, until like the end of or like the middle to end of your second year, so sophomore year of college. This is because a lot of times in like that first year, you're taking prerequisites that practically all the engineers have to take anyway. There might be a small difference in like maybe computer science. You might not have to do like physics and chemistry, but at Notre Dame we do, So like there's might just be like some general like you might be taking calculus, might be taking linear algebra, might be taking chemistry, physics, etc. And then you're not even done with those until like your second semester of freshman year. And then when you start sophomore year, you might have taken some foundations of like I don't know, chemical engineering, but then you usually have like some space in your schedule too for like any issues, like a couple classes here and there. And so switching to another major concentration would just mean that you have to take those fundamental courses. Theoretically, you could change it. You could change your major at any time. It just you have to think about if you want to, take more time to study at school, or if you want to try to finish in those 4 years. So if you're looking at that 4 year timeline, then I would say like at latest, like probably your second semester at sophomore year. But if you're willing to do that extra year or more, you could potentially be changing your junior year too. That's absolutely not unheard of at all. Ethan, is there any more insight from you?
Yeah, I just wanted to quickly add, since we had the example of chemistry versus chemical engineering, if you think at all you want to do engineering, I would suggest applying to the engineering school when you go, because then like you said, those first few years will be fundamental classes like freshman and sophomore year. And so if you do all those classes for chemical engineering, you're like, I would prefer just to chemistry, maybe to do pre-med or whatever else, or you want to do some other minor. It's actually typically easier to transfer from engineering to like the arts and sciences or humanities school than to go the other direction. And then by then you also have completed probably half the classes you need for chemistry anyways. So that's kind of, that would be my suggestion. And then within engineering, depends on the school, but some universities or colleges have specific programs that you need to apply directly into. So like at Hopkins, biomedical engineering is its own program. You have to apply to that when you come. And then trying to get into that later is very, very difficult. So if you are set on a certain major, like you want to do biomedical engineering, which is true at a lot of universities, you have to apply to that directly. And so if you have any idea that you might want to do that, apply to that. Unless it'll also throw off your competition because those programs are usually much more competitive as well. So it's a balance of weighing your options. But I would suggest if you have any inkling of wanting to do engineering, apply to engineering. And then if you decide later you don't want to do that or you want to switch engineering majors, you usually have your first 2 years to decide that.
Yeah, and I'd also add that I think people often think that whatever you major in, like that concentration means that you're stuck in the concentration, right? Like chemical engineers think that you have to then stay in chemical engineering, when in reality you've built a lot of the tools and the skills and the foundations to do a lot of different engineerings. I think what I've learned about like the job application process is that companies like kind of expect you not to really know anything. They just want to have seen that you can learn and that you have this like foundation to then do the job that you're required to do. And so, although there might be a difference in like, I don't think I can go do a chemical engineering job as a computer scientist, nor could maybe they do mine. But between like maybe like mechanical engineering and aerospace engineering, I don't know if there would be, or civil engineering, I'm not sure if there'd be a crazy big difference when you're applying. And in reality, when you're applying for those jobs, which I guess Ethan and I have both done, a lot of times these job descriptions will say like must be majoring in mechanical engineering or civil engineering or industrial engineering or and it's like all these different options or related field, you know. So it's not like you're bounded to something just because you've studied it. So if you're kind of deep into like mechanical engineering and you're like, dang, like I wish I would have done civil engineering instead or electrical engineering instead. Maybe just take like an elective or two classes. A lot of times these jobs aren't even looking for, you know, oh, they have to take these specific classes, but they're looking for what experience do they have? What's their interest there? And, you know, how they overcome these different challenges within the field, you know? So if there's, don't put yourself under pressure if you kind of enter into a scenario in sophomore year, junior year, where you're like, this isn't the major for me. Honestly, I think if you can just complete it, you'll show yourself well enough to that you can do any of the other jobs that might be more related to.
Those are all excellent points. We have another question that was submitted before. We did answer this in the breakout room, but maybe for the benefit of everyone else, we can talk about it again real quick. Will quantum computers break all cybersecurity codes? From Evanston High School, Wyoming. And kind of the short answer is quantum computing is like in the same position that AI is, where AI, I should say, was like 5 or 10 years ago. We're not quite sure yet. It depends on how the technology evolves, and it's evolving very, very quickly. So quantum computers, mathematically speaking, they seem to have the possibility of being able to crack a lot of the things like RSA encryption very quickly, because they can just compute at like way faster rates for a lot of mathematical reasons. But physically, no one has actually done that yet, right? They haven't made a computer that works reliably and can do all those operations at that kind of scale. So right now they're limited by physics rather than math, if that makes any sense. But there's a lot of research in it because a lot of people are interested in that. If quantum computers became mainstream, it would cause a paradigm shift in cybersecurity, right? But kind of like AI, it could go the other way too. The quantum computers could be used for, you know, making things more secure, right? You could create new like encryption that use the quantum computer to create it that might be impossible to crack. And there is something called quantum entanglement, where theoretically two things can talk to each other across any distance and they can't be intercepted. Like it theoretically, again, mathematically speaking, hasn't been proven yet to work in like a real setting. But you could have something that is like a completely like I almost said unspyable, a channel you can't spy on. You don't even have to worry about encryption. You literally can't intercept the message. And then that's mathematically proven. I actually took a class where we did the math behind why it works. It's very weird, makes perfect sense mathematically, physically very strange. However, physically implementing it is very hard. On the other hand, you know, some of those were things people said about AI 10 years ago, and look where we are today. So I would say kind of to be determined, but look at the developments in the physics first. And then we had another question, I think, which kind of connects to the one in the chat from MAHS about the job market and salary for cybersecurity. But we also had a question from Thomas County Central previously submitted about discussing the future demand for careers in cybersecurity. So we'll kind of tackle both of those together about careers and salaries. So I don't know if you guys have any numbers on salaries, but in terms of careers, yeah, we've talked a little bit about how you could work anywhere. I don't want to say anywhere, but like a lot of places with a cybersecurity degree, because everybody needs cybersecurity, right? It's like a universal thing. Any large company is likely going to have an in-house cybersecurity division and some experts. There are also several large firms that do cybersecurity just professionally. They get hired by people to implement security, to hack them, to see how safe they are. There is a career for hackers. They're called white hat hackers, to deliberately hack companies. They're paid by the companies to do this, to see if they're actually that secure. And then, you know, like to implement, you know, antivirus software, to do training sessions. I know for me, at my school, we do cybersecurity training sessions. We're a school. So that's like, there's a company that's contracted to put these sessions together. So that's like another example. I don't know if Annie and Ethan, you have anything you want to add on that?
Okay, so I was just gonna add that I think that well, in general, cybersecurity, just like most engineering jobs, you're going to make a good amount of money. If you're worried about the money, I wouldn't be if you were entering cybersecurity. Typically, so if you don't have a cybersecurity major at your school, you probably enter it kind of with a computer science background, either maybe concentrating and taking some classes in there or just starting out in cybersecurity. Uh, in this regard, computer science as a major as well, you're going to be looking at much like higher than average numbers, starting out probably looking at minimum like 70,000. But I would say pretty quickly in your career, you're advancing to six figures, roughly quickly. I'm not sure if you'll ever make it to the 500,000 or anything crazy like that. But if you think about the median like family dual income in America is like what, 80,000. So you're starting out at 70, you're already like way higher than or close to two people's incomes on the median. So from a money perspective, I truly would not worry too much about that. But in terms of job security, we're talking about like, quantum computers being a thing one day. That also means that cybersecurity is going to need to evolve and probably need a lot more experts on this, right? So I personally don't see cybersecurity going away at all, just because of our need and desire to keep our data private. I would also, this is my assumption, I don't really have much to base this off of, but because things are a lot of times are in-house, right? Like you have this in-house division. I would say its chances are that companies aren't going to want to just get rid of you very quickly, because if it is like this personalized thing for this company, you want your experts there. You want the people who know what's going on there. If it was like some generalized software, then like maybe you can jump around and stuff. But considering this is somebody who knows how your system works entirely, I would assume that like in order to maintain it and develop it, companies are going to want to keep cybersecurity developers and engineers longer than perhaps other fields would.
So I will say it is time to introduce our guest speaker. So I want to thank Annie and Ethan for your time. This was a great session. Thank you everyone who submitted a question. But now I'd like to introduce our guest speaker for today. Kalyani Pawar is a founding application security engineer at Zipline, an MS graduate in security informatics at Johns Hopkins University, an advisor to early stage application security startups, has served on reviewer boards for DEF CON, GHC, Women in Cybersecurity, and B-Sides, and is a mentor to students and professionals with a focus on women and cybersecurity. So without further ado, I want to turn it over to Kalyani to please take it away with her keynote.
Thank you so much for having me here. I'm excited to talk, and I will share my screen in a second so I can talk about everything I want to talk about. Okay, am I sharing my screen?
Looks good to us.
Okay, let's go into the slideshow mode. I am new to Zoom, so please bear with me for a second. Okay, perfect. I think I am ready for this. Okay, all right. So today I want to talk about, oh my God. I'm sorry. All right, let's do this again the right way. Today, I want to talk about what is cybersecurity, why is it an exciting career field, and why we need more engineers to be a part of this industry. I view cybersecurity engineers as superheroes who protect the digital world out there, protectors who help with securing all kinds of data. And with that, let's dive into my journey, and hopefully you like parts of it and would consider security to be a career choice. So I was born in a small town outside of Mumbai, which is in India, which is like, I guess, 25-hour flight away from San Francisco. I was born in a STEM background household. My father is an engineer and my mother is a pharmacist. My father, being an engineer, wanted me to pursue computers and electronics as a career choice. But my mom obviously wanted me to pursue medicine. Up until, I want to say, middle school, I was very excited about medicine. If you would have asked me in 6th or 7th grade, I would have said, I want to be a surgeon or I want to be a cardiologist. I even remember that I had this pretend doctor kit that I had till I was I guess, 16. And sometimes I used to look at it and think about the career that I wanted to choose. But somehow I took a liking to math at that time in school. So I call myself something as an accidental engineer, meaning in ninth grade, there was an elective. I was pretty sure that I wanted to be a surgeon. And so most of my subjects were about biology at the time. I had an elective called engineering drawing. And since I was good at math and logic building, I thought maybe it would be fun to have. I was good at, visualizing machines, and I was good at imagining what the insides of a machine would look like. And so I took up the subject, which you can see on the first picture there. It's a picture of a machine, and then when you maybe dissect it in half, this is how the left side of it would look like. And that's the front view and the side view of the machine. I was great at it. In fact, I was so good at it that I scored the highest in my class consecutively for 2 years. And so I was like, maybe I'm good at this logic thing. And so I took up another class for logic building about like gates in electrical engineering. There was this one subject where we were trying to code, and I somehow took a liking to different algorithms that they were talking about. Now, the picture on the right is a library at my house, it's my parents' library. We had all kinds of books out there about like computer algorithms, and my father used to read a lot of them. And so I had that influence always in my domestic household, where I was exposed to a lot of computer engineering from the get-go. Now, the thing about all of those books is that programming seemed exciting, but somehow I was not the best coder. I could always see that my programs were slower, or had more complexity in it, or were just not efficient enough. But I took certain liking to networking concepts and operating systems. There was like this TCP/IP book and the Linux kernel book, and I took a liking to all of those things. And so somewhere along the way, I was like, I guess if all of my friends are building code, who is going to secure it? And somehow these concepts that I learned in networking, I was able to apply them. This is a picture of me, maybe in sophomore year of my college. I had taken computer science by then, and this is sometime from, I guess, 2010, early 2010s, where Google was looking somewhat like this. I vaguely remember the year that year. And I was learning web dev at that time. So now a funny story I wanted to share here is I was able to download a local copy of the Google web page. And I ended up playing with it a little bit. And instead of the Google exclamation mark, I changed the text to Kalyani was here, and then I ended up saving it. Now, every time I opened the web page, somehow it always pulled up the local copy. Even in my browser, when I used to type google.com, it opened that web page, which I had modified. And there was this thrill of, wow, did I just modify google.com, and will the world know about Kalyani Pawar now? But also, the next feeling I had was panic, because I thought I changed someone's property without asking them, and now I might face some jail time for it. And I was panicking. Every time someone used to knock on our door, I used to feel like the FBI is home. This is in Mumbai. Mumbai is not even in the country. And I used to be like, did the FBI find out? Are they going to put me in the jail now? And I kept up with the panic for like 2 or 3 days. And I think the fourth day I caved. I caved and I told my parents about it. I told my father, like, you know what? We need to get a lawyer stat, because I feel like I messed up, and we need to really, make a plan. We need to exit the country. We need to change our IP address, do whatever we can to hide ourselves. And he's like, no way you hacked Google. And then I showed him what I did. Well, the aftermath of it was that he figured that this is like a career option that I could take up, because I was curious about how I could modify things that were not to be modified. I just needed to understand the systems on a deeper level. That very year, I tried to experiment with different websites and try to make different changes in it. And I was successful at doing some of those. And then I enrolled in something called as bug bounty programs, for different websites, and I was able to report the things that were wrong with the website. Now, a beautiful byproduct of all of that was I figured that I needed more exposure to tech where it is directly happening, rather than in a whole other continent, in a whole time zone, thousands of miles away. And so I sent in applications to different universities in the US, and I got many acceptances, but I chose Johns Hopkins University because I really liked their cybersecurity program at that time. I was thrilled to see their healthcare security work and the research that they were doing in malware analysis and IoT security and all of these things. So I got a one-way ticket to Baltimore, Maryland from Mumbai, India, and then I have been in the States ever since. This was maybe like 8 years ago. And I really thank Johns Hopkins for giving me the opportunity to study there, because it gave me exposure to different resources that I did not have back home. One of them was the RSC Security Scholar Program. Now, what the program is, that there's this conference that happens every year. It's called RSA Conference, that happens in San Francisco. RSA Conference is built by the very people who secured the internet, as it has in its name. And the scholarship program only admits 30 students every year. I just sent in an application with 2 objectives in mind. One is I wanted to see the Golden Gate Bridge. And second is I wanted to meet people who are actually implementing and securing the internet day in, day out. And I got it. They really liked my application because I was addressing about all the threats that the humans will face in future. And we'll come to a little bit of that later on through this keynote. And that's a picture of me at the conference. Now, in the conference, there is this one day, which we call as the Security Scholar Day. And there's a dinner with like 30 really esteemed members of the security community, people who are doing amazing advancements in security. One of the pictures here on the far right is with Whitfield Diffie. If you've heard of Diffie-Hellman key exchange, basically it's a key exchange algorithm where you can share a key between 2 parties who have no knowledge about each other on an insecure channel. And that key exchange plays a very vital role in securing SSH connections, or you can like go read about it. But that key exchange was monumental in securing the internet. And something really interesting happened at the conference too. Apart from meeting people who made the RSA algorithm and things like that, I had colored hair back then. And there was another person on the dinner table with me who also had colored hair. And I was like, hey, what hairstyle routine do you follow? Unbeknown of who am I talking to? I asked them this question and we had a very friendly conversations, but what happened after was I was telling them about all the projects I did in the last couple years of my career, where one of them was trying to find vulnerabilities in Alexa's Echo Dot, where we were able to cause Alexa to lose connection with the internet, and we were able to report that to Amazon. And then another one was securing the DJI Phantom drones and finding ways in which we could securely secure the password mechanism in it. Then there were another project about trying to use AI to different machine learning algorithms to study the nature of attack vectors and how we can protect power plants from such attacks. So all of these projects came into existence because because I was curious about what is wrong with the system and how I can, fix it so that it works the right way. And second is the innate wish to secure something, to make it more safer so that everybody can use it without it being exploited. So I was able to talk about these projects, and this lady with the similar hair was like, I'm willing to offer you an internship. And it happened to be an internship at this company called Intuit. If you work with financial software, Intuit makes TurboTax, QuickBooks, and all of these. And so my job at Intuit was to find out vulnerable things in their program and work with developers to fix it. like we were discussing, James was discussing a while ago, the concept of ethical hacking, right? Offensive security engineers are hired by companies to find out flaws in their systems before an external hacker comes and exploits it. And that's what most of my job at Intuit was. It was to find out ways in which we could secure the financial applications and protect sensitive data like your SSNs and other kinds of PIIs before it gets leaked out into the internet. And soon after, I graduated from school with a master's degree. Now, this was during pandemic where I figured that I did not enjoy working in big organizations because I was not able to have that kind of freedom, the latitude of making the kind of changes I wanted to make and to deliver the kind of impact I wanted to deliver, which is when I met the founders of this product called Ag0 AI. What they do is that they build AI models to detect cyber attacks, and they try to protect small, medium businesses. Now, we often, in big industries, we end up overlooking small to medium businesses because security is not viewed as an innate requirement for the business to grow, right? But Ag0 did it at a very financially efficient level, and the models did a great job of detecting what can go wrong and tell you when your system is under attack. Soon after, I met my former boss at another conference. Thank God that I stumbled and had this conversation with her. She told me that about this really cool autonomous drone technology. And she was telling me about how the dream was to give medical access to everyone on this planet. That's Zipline. So Zipline builds autonomous drone tech to transport all kinds of goods actually to different parts of the world. They do this on a whole global scale. And I think the reason why I wanted to go to Zipline was I always thought about how much impact can I make, right? And I think if you want to have a humanitarian career, you should definitely think about Zipline as one of them. And then I joined Zipline sometime in 2021, and I still continue to work at Zipline. Something important that I would like to share here is always remember whatever you're doing in your career, it should make you happy. It should help you go to sleep at night. If the day you don't feel happy enough is the day you figure you have to do something else with what you do. And a little bit about Zipline. Zipline is now supporting a lot of countries in Rwanda, Nigeria, Japan, Ghana, all of these countries. We're trying to deliver healthcare supplies in a fashion that we do it in a very economical and environment-friendly way, and in a way that most of these countries who don't have easy access to medicines can have easy access to medicine. Some of the interesting stats that I would like to share is, say, in country of Rwanda, Zipline delivers 75% of the blood supplies there. They also reported, I think 90% is the number, less wastage of blood since Zipline came into the picture at the healthcare organizations there. Zipline has made about 90 million commercial autonomous miles, and it has also made over 1 million deliveries all across the world. So all this to say that I work on securing this autonomous technology, which is helping and impacting so many people all across the globe and giving them access to medical supplies, something that's hard to see. And here is a quick glimpse of what Zipline is. See the drone in action.
Some want delivery drones to buzz off. Are the delivery drones? Drone delivery. Drone.
When we started doing this, everybody thought it was really stupid. So we were wasting our time. It wasn't a real problem. Technology was never going to work. Luckily, we were listening to customers, doctors, nurses, and ministers of health who had been living those problems every single day. They are delivering instantly and autonomously to thousands of different hospitals and health facilities throughout the country. Bada bing, bada boom.
where we check the packages all the time because sometimes it'll change other people's lives.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, that's what Zipline is. It's a really cool drone and it's doing amazing things. Well, so a little bit I wanted to share about outside of Zipline, there are other things to drive impact in your career. One is I try to educate as many people about how do you safely use AI in your day-to-day activities. And I regularly go to conferences and try to educate many people about how to do it. I also try to help people from marginalized communities try to break into this field, which seems very daunting from the outside, but is really not that daunting. As a part of my favorite thing to do is talking. I really like talking. I'm a yapper. And so I also host a podcast called Application Security podcast, weekly podcast, where we talk about all the things that are going wrong in the industry and how we can make it better and give suggestions to people who have the instinct to want to build secure software from the get-go. Something I really like to tell people and everybody who's choosing a career in cybersecurity is if you're on the offensive side, you only have to be right once. But if you're on the defensive side, meaning you're trying to protect something, you have to be right every single time. So there's a lot of responsibility that comes with it. But if you really enjoy and find the impact in it, you should definitely do it. Moving on. I want to talk a little bit about why cybersecurity matters and why we should have more people becoming a part of it. As you can see so far, cybersecurity is starting to impact every industry now. It's almost becoming a part of our daily lives. For example, if you need medical access, like we showed Zipline, is ensuring medical access. Healthcare industry is also being an increasing target of cybersecurity attacks out there. For example, I heard recently that about $11 million are spent in breaches in recent years just to protect the healthcare security on all the data that are stored in these healthcare institutions. Water, for example, critical infrastructure, systems, power grids, water. We need access to all of these. Internet sounds like a basic human right now. And so imagine if you had, every time you were using the internet and you were losing your hard-earned money just to, have access to internet. Isn't that brutal? It would limit our access to the outside world so much. Education field, you want more educated people in the society so we can have more, a better way of living in the society. And so you want to protect that field too. And I'm talking about, I missed out on financial services here, but we keep using our credit cards everywhere and our bank accounts everywhere. And imagine someone stealing all that from you. Imagine someone stealing your identity online so that they could buy new things for themselves. That's wrong. And that's why cybersecurity matters. And some more threats I want to talk about in the coming future. Phishing scams, as simple as they sound, they are so rampant out there. You might see your grandparents become easy victims of phishing scam, because a recent story I heard was a grandmother got a message saying someone had stolen all the photos on her phone, and they ended up asking her for some kind of money in order for her to get access to all the photos. And then she ended up clicking on the link, and then they stole literally everything off of her phone. So phishing scams. And what I dislike about this is innocent people are becoming victims of phishing scams. There's a certain sense of responsibility you feel when you hear old people becoming victims of such attacks. So that is another rampant attack that's happening in the industry. The second one is your power grid. There was an incident that happened a couple of years ago, I believe in Florida, where they were able to hack into the sewage system, and they were able to mess it up in such a way that the dirty water was starting to make its way to the filtered water. It's sad. You're literally jeopardizing people's health in this. So power grids and your ICS and SCADA systems are an important part of this. The third one is ransomware. Some data I read somewhere was about $4.8 million have been exhausted in the cybersecurity attacks in the last year or so. So what ransomware does is that they somehow encrypt all your files, and until you pay money for it, they're not going to give it back to you. A lot of small, medium businesses fall victim to ransomware every year. And these numbers are just exploding year and year after. The cloud. We end up storing so much data with every click on the cloud. Imagine there's so many of our private files on the cloud, on iCloud. I store most of my pictures sometimes and some of my documents still on iCloud. So imagine how much importance cloud security has right now. We need to, explore into more secure mechanisms for storage of this data. Another increasing one that we talk about is AI ML security. Like I was talking about, using AI applications in your daily lives. There are secure ways to use AI applications. A very popular example was the Samsung breach, where some of Samsung researchers ended up sharing confidential Samsung files with ChatGPT, and then that got leaked with everybody else. Isn't that a nightmare? All your hard-earned work being exploited just like that because you didn't know that the LLM was going to share it with everybody else. And so something I always tell people is, one, do not trust everything the LLM tells you, try to verify it. And two is, do not share your private details with LLM. The LLM does not have to know what your SSN is, what your income is, or anything about you. It does not need that information. And the last one is IoT security. We use so many IoT devices right now. We have a Google Nest and Amazon Echo and your home security system and all of this. Everything is connected to each other. Imagine breaching one and then somehow it making way into your whole house. That's unfortunate. And as time passes by, we're just going to keep using more and more IoT devices. I don't see us moving far away from it. And so that's also becoming an increasing area of concern. And while I was talking about, cybersecurity as a career, there are certain things that, while you are highly aware of the threats that are happening in the world, but also if you want to pursue a career in cybersecurity, there's just some advice I have for you today. One is, have you heard the concept of Ikigai? Ikigai basically means finding your purpose, finding your reason for being. So it's basically a Venn diagram with all these 4 circles in it. If you find something that you are good at, if you find something that you love doing, if you find something that can help and impact the world, and something that you can get paid for, when you intersect all of these 4 things, you found Ikigai. A rough example of Ikigai, if I can give you, is what I love doing is understanding systems on a deeper level, finding out how intricately these talk to each other. What I am good at is solving puzzles. I'm good at explaining people what a certain problem is and how we could fix it to make their lives better. What the world needs. The world needs more people who are trying to secure the internet because there's so much happening out there and so many victims falling to all these attacks. What can you be paid for? My skills to secure all of these systems that I was understanding. And so all of these, an intersection of all of these made me understand that I could be a good security engineer. And it makes me happy. It makes me figure out my reason for being, my purpose. And so something I always say is that if you spend maybe 8 hours of your day working, that's literally 1/3 of your whole day, maybe 1/3 of your life. Be happy doing it because it's literally 1/3, and 1/3 isn't a small fraction. Another is fail a lot. Someone told me very early on that FAIL is an acronym for first attempt in learning. Fail a lot, make failure, be comfortable with failure, step out of your comfort zone. It's normal to be anxious and scared of failure. What's not normal is throwing in the towel and not trying new things just because you're scared of putting yourself out there. The more you fail, the more of a learning curve it is, and the more you're closer to your success. And so fail a lot, try different combinations and see what works best for you. This is a very important one, especially in cybersecurity. Develop a moral compass very early on. Have ethics and like a code of honor. You could use your skills for doing bad things and hurting people, but that's not the right way to do it. Instead, use your skills to do good things, make a good impact. The earlier you develop a moral compass and like understand what a moral code of conduct is, the better it is for you. I've also heard some horror stories from people. Obviously, we all know about like the common, the aftermath of like hackers being caught and then they do jail time and all of that. Everybody faces regret, but regret at a certain time, it really hurts you. It makes it difficult for you to go through day by day. And believe that, oh, I did something so wrong and now I've hurt so many people. You don't want to have that regret. It's just harder to live with that kind of regret. And this is a very valuable advice someone gave me. Thankfully, find a mentor. Find someone who has done all the things that you have done and ask them questions. Ask them to help you with different things and see how you can learn from them. Sometimes having a mentor will help you avoid all those mistakes that you could have made, and then investing all that time in correcting all those mistakes. A mentor will help you find the right direction to solve a certain problem. And how do you start your cybersecurity journey today? This is like a rough roadmap, which I used, and I also know a certain number of people who've tried to use it. First is very important, obviously, learn the basics, understand different networking concepts, understand what a good program looks like, understand all these vulnerabilities and hacks out there, different cyber attacks that are going on, and how they happen. To have hands-on experience, try something called as the capture the flag. There are many websites to do this. There's Hack the Box and Try Hack Me, where you try to talk to different virtual machines and see how you can find something important on them. It's like a puzzle. It's kind of like a puzzle. Get involved in local cybersecurity communities. My favorite one is B-Sides. B-Sides Vegas and B-Sides SF have been very monumental in my career, in the sense that I was able to go and talk to more people who were also doing the same things as I did. There were conferences and talks that were happening where I could learn new things about how I could improve my current working style, or I could learn new things about security. Just talking to more people, networking always helps. Try to read as many cybersecurity newsletters as you can. One of the easiest ones to understand is Krebs on Security. There's many out there. Listen to cybersecurity podcasts. There's Darknet Diaries. Very interesting stories for someone who's not even, like a cybersecurity guru and just starting out. And then you can listen to all these different stories in there. Lastly, stay persistent and curious. That's really important for a career in cybersecurity. As long as you're curious, as long as you try every single day, you will understand concepts. It will come to you. It will eventually come to you. Everything comes to you. It just takes a certain amount of time. And I shared a QR code at the end. You can just use the QR code, and I've linked all of these websites on there if that works for you. And you can always reach out to me on my X handle or my LinkedIn if you have any questions. I'm always happy to help young minds. And so with all that, I want to ask if you are ready to be the digital protectors of the world. And it feels like a tough and daunting job, but it's really not that tough once you start having fun and enjoying what it is. And thank you for hearing me today. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer.
Yes, thank you, Kalyani. That was an excellent presentation. I think there were a lot of great takeaways. So actually, I'm going to share some stuff that I took away from this that I thought was really interesting. You wanted to seek out tech where it was happening, right? Your advice, what you do in your career, make sure you can sleep at night. I think that's great advice. We talk about, looking for jobs. I think sometimes we're worried about what will make the most money, but right, what do we feel the most proud of, right? I like the thing about cybersecurity. The hacker only has to be right once. The defenders have to be right every single time. Being comfortable with failure is really important. In every career in engineering, we talk a lot about iteration. We learn from our mistakes. That's great stuff. Developing a moral compass and staying curious. I fully agree with everything here, and I really echo it because it's such great advice. And ikigai, I think we can all learn a lot about that. Taking the time to look at ourselves. I think introspection is something that engineers in particular sometimes we're not always great about doing. But just taking the time to think about like what we love, what we're good at, and what that intersection is. Sometimes we're a little bit worried about either the money or just what's cool, right? I think that's also a temptation in engineering is just, well, it's cool, right?
I
But
think
yes.
if I can go ahead with this, there's always this career advice I give everyone is that there's always three things that are important in the work you do. One is the kind of people you work with. Two is if it's enough to pay your bills. And three is what kind of impact are you making? If you found 3 on 3, you've hit jackpot. If you found 2 on 3, you're in a good space. But the day it becomes 1 on 3 is maybe you should start looking outside and experimenting with what works for you.
I fully agree. And so at this point, we did have some of our students have questions for you ahead of time. So I do want to be respectful of them. So I'm just going to kind of dive right in. So from the School of the Holy Child, how did you get interested in information technology, specifically application security? I think you touched on this a little bit, but if you have anything else you'd like to add, particularly about application security.
So I have had a very diverse career. I started out as someone who could just read code and then and basically become a part of bug bounty programs and see what was wrong with the code and how it could be fixed. But over time, I realized that there's more to it. Instead of just saying that this is wrong, how do you fix it is also an important piece that gets missed out a lot of times in the industry. That helped me develop more of a defender mindset than an offender mindset. And application security is more of a so there's three terms in security we talk about: red team, blue team, and purple team. Red team are the hackers, the offensive security people. Blue team are the defenders. When an attack happens on your system, they're the ones who are doing forensics and all kinds of things to stop the attack. And the purple team is a mix of both of them. And so application security falls under purple teaming, where you understand what's wrong with it and you find all the ways to fix it. And then you try to build secure software at the end of the day. And that's how I found my calling through offensive security and fixing it.
That's great. Thanks. I think we have a few questions. I know there's also ones in the chat, but there's like a general kind of question about how do students who are like interested in computer science who are still in high school prepare themselves for like the cybersecurity industry or the technology industry when they graduate, right? Like what can they be doing in high school to kind of get themselves ready for a computer science cybersecurity career?
So to break into cybersecurity, start with learning the basics, like the networking concepts, the operating system concepts. Try to understand a system as much as you can. The greater details you get into it, the more gaps you will see in it. Second is the hack the boxes. I think they were very helpful in helping me understand what could possibly go wrong. All this, system engineering knowledge, this operating system knowledge that I had, for example, like, oh, what does this port do? And if I would see the port open on a virtual machine, then I would feel like, oh, there's something wrong with it. For example, if you have an SSH port open to the whole world, that's not safe, that's not secure. And so if you get more understanding of what SSH is, how it works, and it should not be open to 0000, and you are able to understand what to secure at that point. So get greater understanding of the foundations, do hands-on things with Hack the Box. Once you are comfortable with all of these concepts, try to see if you can find real-world applications for it. An example that I recently discovered was one of my friends. They built this Mallard project where they would look at certain rules that certain things that would change in your system every time an attack happens, and then they would build rules within their own system in order to find, in order to get an alert every time these things change. So you can try your real world projects and see what makes you think that this is fun, what gets your creativity to explode. And that's how I would say it's more hands-on than anything. And I really like that in today's day and age, you do not necessarily need to have a college degree in order to become a security engineer. It's the mindset that matters.
That's a great answer. And kind of to add on to that, so you discussed a lot of the technical aspects. Some of those students were wondering about the soft skills that are necessary for success in this field.
Don't be a difficult person to work with. I think that's important in every industry now. Another skill I learned, which was helpful, was being able to explain my results in such a way that my audience understood or resonated with it. For example, if I just go with numbers like, say, we have 10 mobile phones that nobody uses. If I say that, I don't know, nobody can make sense out of it. But if I say that these are 10 mobile phones without any passcode on it, that would make more sense, right? That would tell, oh, this seems like a problem, right? So find ways in which you can explain a certain problem in a way that it resonates with your audience. That's a very important soft skill to have. And network. Make as many friends as you can anywhere. Networking was very daunting for me initially, but the more you start putting yourself out there, better it is. I have made some really great friends at conferences. I just attended a wedding of someone I met on LinkedIn many years ago, and now they're very good friends with me. So yeah.
Yeah, I'd love to echo what she said about being able to communicate what you need to your audience. That's a great thing. It's a great skill for engineers to have that, in my experience, not all engineers have.
Yeah.
The ability to communicate to different people, right? Because engineers don't just work with engineers, right? We work with business people, we work with like policymakers and customers, of course, right?
Even in security, you end up meeting with a lot of lawyers,
Mm.
which was news to me when I started out, where I was like, why I don't understand these terms that they're talking about. And so
Right.
building that bridge of your understanding and their understanding, that's a very crucial aspect. And you can build so many amazing things once you understand your audience, because you understand what their pain points are and what their requirements are. And you are an engineer, so you figure how to build things.
Yeah, exactly. The priorities that different people have are different, right? Lawyers are not prioritizing the same thing engineers are. And that doesn't mean someone's right or wrong. It's just how their jobs work, right?
Yeah.
And kind of to the point that you were making too about networking, I wanted to add on, you've met a lot of key mentors and you talked about the importance. What was your approach to these conversations when you first meet a mentor and like leading to a relationship becoming a mentorship relationship?
So I want to start out with two things. Earlier, I used to get intimidated when I used to talk to people. I used to feel like, oh my God, they've done all of these amazing things in their career, and will they even talk to me? I've had one-off experiences where they were not willing to have a great conversation, and that's okay. But it's the good ones that I have built relationships with. So do not get intimidated, because there might be some things that you know that they don't know. And once you figure that out for yourself, you might not be scared of having those conversations. Second is be okay showing that you don't know something. Once you're developing that vulnerability with someone, it could often lead you to conversations where you get to learn so many things. So be okay with not knowing things and also sharing that I don't know this, and you might just learn something new. And what else? Another thing is, don't always have conversations with the intention of what can I get out of this. Something I learned later on was, if I can create value for someone else, they would start appreciating me, and it would be a two-way street. An example I could give is, I helped someone on a rainy day with an umbrella, and that woman is my friend today. And we submit talks to conferences, and she recommends my names in different rooms where I might not even be there, or I do the same for her. So rather than what I can get out of this, what can I do for them? That creates long-lasting relationships.
That's great advice. Yes. I think we have 1 minute left. I just wanted to ask real quick if you had any advice specifically for women in cybersecurity, since I know you're very involved with that sort of outreach, and we can maybe close with that question.
Yes. When you start working in the tech world, you will realize that a lot of it feels like a boys' club. Earlier, I used to feel like everybody was talking about sports, and I didn't know much about sports. And I used to feel left out in having those conversations with them. But what you have to figure out is what you enjoy in the job you do and what they have in the job that they do and what you can learn from them, and try to have those conversations. I used to feel like maybe if I watched more basketball matches and more baseball matches, I would be able to have a conversation with them. Honestly, that's not the way to, you know, become friends with these people. Do not, you might feel alone sometimes because you're the only woman in this room full of men, but do not get intimidated by it. You earn your seat at the table. You have something in you, and that is why you are at the table. So do not undermine that ever. Don't let anyone else tell you that you get to be here just because you're a woman. That's not fair. That's not right. You earned it. And so be proud of it and speak up. If you think something is off, speak up.
I think that's a great place to end it. Thank you so much for this presentation. This was really outstanding. I think our students got a lot out of it. And thank you everyone for your questions. Those who submitted questions during the chat and before, those were really some great questions as well. I think at this point, I'm going to remind you, Jen just added to the chat your student exit ticket. I think, am I stealing Monica's job? Monica, do you want to take over at this point?
You got this. You got this. I want to say, James, phenomenal day, entire from beginning to end. James had led this cybersecurity event so fantastically. Just want a round of applause for James. Fantastic keynote, but again, James hit on it. These student questions and this engagement today, even with a digital lab, is impressive and off the charts. So thank you to your teachers and students for being here. Teachers, there is a student exit ticket, but there's also a teacher exit ticket. So don't forget about your homework. And we hope to see you for the next event on December 18th, our magic show. And have a great day, everybody.